give me one shot here on a blue chip stock, believe me, Kevin, the only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
Nobody knows if the stock is going to go up, down, sideways, or in circles.
What's going on, NBA Draft fans? Your boys are back. The Wolves of Ball Street, your favorite draft analyst. My name is Corey Teleba, and I am here, as always, with my co-host, Albert Garbage Time Gim, for another episode of the NBA Draft Show on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed and YouTube feed. So if you are here watching live, we appreciate you watching. Make sure that you like and subscribe right about now if you have not done that yet. And if you're listening on the podcast feed or Twitter/X, welcome to you as well. Albert, how we doing today on this lovely evening / I guess afternoon for you in Los Angeles?
Another beautiful day. Really excited to be here, Corey. We just mentioned how you're on a little bit of vacation right now, and you know what? The East Coast needs it. I heard you guys have gotten a lot of snow this year, but I'm excited, Corey. I just want to preface this whole podcast by saying I feel like today we're going to be talking about like caviar or like black truffle. Like fries are cool, but then like truffle fries are better. Is how I'm feeling about our pod
Truffle
today.
fries are better. I had like a truffle oil pizza last week.
Come on.
Like pepperoni and truffle oil pizza. Yeah. Oh, and then we had my wife and I went to the city, New York City, for those unfamiliar, the city. And we had truffle butter over our perfectly cooked medium rare steak from Kings of Kobe in Hell's Kitchen, which just an unbelievable meal after seeing Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on Broadway, which was excellent. So yeah, I get you. I feel you on the truffle butter.
Very excited. I saw your photos, was very, very jealous. I'll be in New York this summer, and so hopefully I can see that myself. But the food looked incredible.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, the hard part about planning a night like that is just like deciding where to eat. Quite honestly, because I mean, and obviously in LA too, like, you know, you're in these major cities with like world-class dining. It's just hard to pick a spot. And just like it's going to be, I think, hard to pick between these two really fun, enticing prospects. Today, we are going to be covering Arizona's Carter Bryant and St. Joseph's Rasheer Fleming, two really interesting wings / forwards that I think have a lot of similarities and some differences that I'm really excited to talk through, but I think both really enticing, and two guys who right now maybe don't have like a whole ton of momentum for their draft stock, but ultimately I think could potentially be two really, really big risers. So I'm excited to break down their game, and we are going to start with Rasheer Fleming from St. Joe's. Fleming is a 6'9", 240-pound wing per St. Joe's website. He has a rumored 7'4" wingspan, which is very enticing. And he is a junior who is going to be 20.9 years old on draft night. So still pretty young for his age. So, this is a guy who I think has been like a kind of a hot sleeper name the last couple of years, a guy to monitor, just because you look at his physical tools and you look how strong he is, and his length, his athleticism. And, it's a guy who is really, really, truly intriguing, but never really put it together the way that I think he has started to put it together this year. So he is averaging 14.7 points per game, 8.8 rebounds per game, 1.3 assists to 1.6 turnovers, 1.5 blocks, 1.4 steals on 55, 42.6, 70 shooting split, 65 true shooting, 8.7 BPM. So a very, very intriguing forward is Rasheer Fleming.
Yeah, Corey. Interesting is the right word. And I think, as we get into his breakdown, I think, I do want to give, I think it was Tyler Metcalf, who wrote a beautiful piece about Fleming. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey. I'm pretty sure it was. But he did a beautiful article on him at NoCeilingsNBA.com. And I really liked how at the start of his piece, he focused in on the fact that, and like you just said, Corey, the flashes have always been there, right? Like the physique, the athleticism, the length, all that stuff has been there. But this year has been different because, as you mentioned, things are starting to come together more a little bit this year. And we're seeing, I mean, the key word is consistency. We are seeing a more consistent version, and a more consistent, well, not just version, but like we're more consistently seeing him put all these things together, game to game. So I think with Fleming, I'm really excited to hear, because I know, Corey, you're a big fan of his, and I like him too. But I'm excited to get into the breakdown, because he's a guy who has a lot of gifts, has a lot of talents, but this year has been very different because he's really starting to put things together, and even like efficiency wise, things have been a lot better this year. So yeah, a very exciting forward for us to talk about today.
Yeah, no doubt. And Rucker got to see him at Formula Zero in the offseason, at Dame Lillard and Phil Becker's camp. I saw him against Texas with our very own Nathan Grubel at the Barclays Center earlier this year. And to me, seeing him up close definitely set him up in a different light. And seeing, like, you could tell he's a beast on film, but like seeing him up close next to some of these other guys, you're like, oh, this dude's different. Like he is way different, as far as, he just has a ready-made NBA body in the best ways, and like he moves like it too. So let's kind of get into the scout with Fleming, and you know how we do it here. We like to start with shooting on the show. So Fleming is finally kind of putting it together as a shooter. He's shooting 42.6% from three on 4 3-point attempts a game, 7.7 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, 42.6 on catch and shoot threes, 50% unguarded, 38% on unguarded catch and shoot threes. So, I mean, he has never, I guess we'll also say he's shooting right around 70% on free throws, a little bit under, if we're being honest. So, where are you at with Rasheer Fleming as a shooter? Do you think that this is kind of a hot shooting year? Or do you think that this feels more real and he's made kind of legit improvements?
I think for me, Corey, we have to highlight the fact that he's improved year over year. We like the progression. We like the trajectory that his shooting is going right now. Just to kind of read off some stats here, his freshman season for St. Joe's, he was 29.7% on 2.4 attempts per game from three. Last year as a sophomore, 32.4% on 3 attempts. So volume went up, efficiency went up. And then this year, right, 42.6% on 4 attempts. And so for me, it's, hey, the shooting is, not only are we getting an uptick in volume every single season, but the efficiency keeps going up leaps and bounds right now. From year 1 to year 2, went up 3%. From year 2 to year 3, we're at like an 8% jump. But also want to know, Corey, and this is something that we care about a lot: the free throw shooting too, right? Obviously, his second year was not so good. He was, so first year 69%, then 61%, and then this year right under 70%.
Yeah.
But what's important for me is, I think, his overall game, and we talked about it earlier. There is a more consistent vibe with his game overall, and I think the shooting is where it's kind of the most glaring, right? For him to be at 42.6% on the highest volume of his career, and the fact that both the volume percentages keep going up every single season, that's a really, really great sign. And at the same time, when we're talking about like projecting the future, I don't think it's going to be linear like that. And next year he'll be at 6 attempts at 49%. That's just not how things work. However, I think if we have to do an evaluation and come to a decision on where we think his shooting is going, I think we have to say it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, no, for sure. Is he going to be a 42% 3-point shooter? Who knows? I mean, I would probably say he's going to hover somewhere in like the 35 to 39 range, especially early on in his career. He might even be a guy who's more of that 32, 33% coming in early, just, adjusting to the distance of the line and the closeouts and, the quickness that you have to process to, make those shots. But I think the shot, like Stephen W. in the chat says, the stroke is fluid and natural. And I think it is too. I think he can get a little knock need. And I think he got a solid base. Like it's not like super wide or perfectly, balanced, like you would be if you were in like a fighting stance. It's a little upright, but it makes him already, like, he's already tall, and it makes him kind of taller, and he has like that high release, and he actually jumps on his threes. So like he creates a really difficult shot to like clean contest, and I like that he's comfortable shooting with a hand in his face. Guys will kind of drift off him and let him shoot, and he's willing to shoot. And I also kind of like that if he misses some shots, he'll keep shooting, which I think is a really good sign. But all the numbers are definitely pointing in a strong direction. And I don't think this is like a Davion Mitchell situation where he had this massive jump. Like you said, he's trending up in the right direction. And like Davion was hitting like a ton of like tough, contested, off the dribble shots, step backs, right? And then he's also smaller as is. So like, as you move up, like he's going to be a top tier like physical specimen, even in the NBA. So I kind of think that the shooting is believable. And like most young like players struggle to shoot with consistency early on. I mean, like, what's Grady Dick shooting right now, right? Like that's his main strength. And like, so the shooting is, I think, not going to be like there completely right away, but like I think he's going to develop into being like a guy that you definitely like close out hard on going forward. But yeah, like he's got good follow through. It's not like he doesn't shoot like a super high arcing ball. I don't think he like has like a super solid touch. As far like it's not like super soft, but I think that like ultimately like it's something I definitely believe is going to be a part of his game, like sure.
Yeah, Corey, I think there are two things for me. I think first off, I'm worried less about the jump to the next level. Not that I disagree with you. I do think I don't think he's going to walk in and be a 43% 3-point shooter from year one. But I do feel like he's going to have less to adjust to just because, number one, the frame is already there. And number two, there isn't a very, he doesn't have the most diverse game offensively. I think the role that he'll be asked to do in the NBA will be not so complicated. You're not going to be putting the ball in his hands and asking him to make decisions or do much of any dribbling. Honestly, a lot of it, he's barely going to dribble, I think. So I feel like coming in, I think he could just kind of hone in on his shooting and just work on it a ton coming in. And so I don't know, a part of me feels like I think he might transition better than we think. But who knows? I could be wrong. But yeah, I just felt like overall, like with how simple his game is, I wasn't crazy worried about like the transition for him. And if anything, I thought maybe that could be an advantage for him too. Just like he can just focus on, the simple things that he's going to be doing. And so, yeah, I think he's going to be okay. And overall, as you mentioned, the shot looks good. And there was another point I was going to make about his motion, but I can't remember. This old age.
I think the important point they're making is like he is going to have like a ready-made, simple, simplistic role coming in, which I think we can say about Carter Bryant too. And he is like Mr. Ray says, he's going to be a play finisher at the next level, right? So I think that what you don't see from him is a ton of like off the bounce flashes. He's taken 3 shots off the bounce this year, and he has missed all of them. 2 of them have been at the end of a shot clock. One of them was kind of like a self-created look where he kind of like got into the mid post and took like a little fade away, and it looked smooth, but like, you know, it was literally the only shot that he took off the bounce. That wasn't an end of shot clock shot, and even then, few and far between. So like the self-creation stuff is, as like a shooter, is not there, right? Like, which I think is like a good opportunity to kind of get into what he ultimately looks like as a self-creator or as a, you know, creator in general. Because while the off the bounce shooting isn't there, and like if you view him as like a guy who is more of like a swing wing, like you want him to be able to do a little bit of that, right? Even if it's simple, like off of like a pump fake, 2 dribble kind of pull up in the mid range when he can't get all the way to the rim. But I do think he's had some flashes as a driver.
Yeah.
He had like a couple of really nice flashes when I saw him in person. One that ended up with a shot, another that ended up with a pass. But like it's still mostly kind of like line drivey. Sometimes it could be like a little clunky. Like a defender will beat him to the spot and he'll have to like turn his back and kind of like use his footwork and his strength, which he can do. I think his footwork is pretty good, even though it's not like he doesn't have like super light feet. I'm not saying they're heavy either. But you know, he's no Derek Queen when he's, you know, kind of using those spin moves. So sometimes it feels a little rushed, but like I think there are some flashes of him at least like using the ability to like attack and get towards the rim, even if like there's not too much going on in that like mid-range area.
Corey, I think a point that you made about him being clunky at times, I think is a really important one, because something I wrote in my notes is that's actually something I feel about his game overall. There are times that he can be clunky on both ends of the floor, but I didn't put that in my notes as like a slight against him, more of just like, I think that's just where he's at right now in terms of his development. I feel like he still needs more refinement. Like this is his 3rd season at St. Joe's, but that doesn't mean that he's finished. He's a finished product is my ultimate point. And I think, that was also the point I was trying to make in terms of his shooting, where I was actually surprised that he wasn't more clunky as a shooter because of how long armed he is. And we've seen in the past where guys with like long arms, it can be a little clunky and inconsistent with their mechanics. And I actually wanted to give him credit because I felt like for a guy with the crazy wingspan that he has, I felt like his mechanics were pretty tight and pretty repeatable for, you know, a guy his size. And so I did want to give him credit for that. But offensively, I agree. But at the same time, Corey, for me, and Metcalf wrote this in his piece as well, like it doesn't bother me too much because like we saw in the comments, like if he's going to be a play finisher to start, then we're okay with that, right? Keep it simple, play your role, we're okay. But you know, over the course of his career, will he be able to develop more and become a guy who can do more with the ball in his hands? We shall see. We don't know the answer to that. But to your point, Corey, he has had some really strong drives and he's shown some more ability than I think people expect from him. But at the same time, like if you're watching Fleming and hoping like he's going to be Paul George, Luka Doncic, whatever, like it's just not his game and it's not his profile either. And so if we're looking at him to be more of like a play finishing wing four ish type of guy, then I think he's, you know, already got a lot of the tools that you're looking for. But now it's just a matter of waiting to see if he can continue to develop more and add more layers to his game.
Yeah, and I think that is going to be the thing that takes a ton of time if he ever gets there. Like that's going to be 4 or 5 years down the line. Like luckily, I think he has tools that'll be able to potentially get him on the floor early. Now, there are some things that I can be like, okay, maybe you can hesitate to say it for sure, because I do think some of the processing stuff like has been a lot better. And, you know, we can talk about like the playmaking when we get to it, but even like it shows in his self-creation when he is like dribbling towards the rim, like sometimes he won't read the help necessarily and he'll even like dribble into it. And, you know, he'll kind of like turn the ball over just because he's dribbling into traffic, or it'll result in like, a harder shot than he needs to when he gets towards the rim, because, he's beating that first line, but not necessarily seeing the second line. So I think that stuff, as we're saying, might look clunky early, but ultimately, the fact that he can knock down threes, he is knocked down 43 threes so far this season. We're in mid-February, combined with his ability to finish at the rim, where he has 34 dunks. And he's I think a pretty awesome finisher overall. And honestly, sometimes even a guy who I want to see used more as like a finisher with a head of steam than like sometimes it feels like he's just kind of like standing in the corner as a spacer. And like I want to see him used as like a pick and roll guy. Now the problem with that is that like Eric Reynolds ain't passing the rock. Like he's got the ball, like you can bet your bottom dollar that thing's going up. He's gonna let it fly. So if like if X Brown isn't the one who is kind of organizing things, like Derek Simpson's certainly not really much of a playmaker either. The whole offense feels kind of clunky, but like I think he sets really good screens. He's like quick off the ground. He covers a lot of ground. He's like a good jumper. So like I almost like think that some of the small ball 5 stuff is really fun with him too. But really efficient cutter, 94th percentile. But I like the combo that he has, like perimeter and rim gravity at the same time.
Yeah. No, I agree with all that, Corey. And I think, okay. So just going back to my original point that I made before when we were getting started with the pod, the reason why like I was thinking of like caviar and truffle oil and things like that is because like when I look at Fleming's game and Carter Bryant, which we'll get into later, these guys are like accentuators or level raisers is kind of what I was thinking as I was doing my breakdown for both. And it's like I'm not drafting Rasheer Fleming to come in and be a number 1, number 2 option on my team. Right. I'm grabbing Rasheer Fleming to come in, and we'll talk about the defense later, but I want him to come in and play his role. I think he's going to be a good screener who is going to be able to be a vertical threat, a guy who can pick and pop. And something I wanted to say before too, Corey, when you were talking, is that I do think they should use him more in pick and roll action, but also like they do give him some decent like pick and pop action as well, and he's been able to hit some, and maybe they need to do a little bit more pick and roll with him. But just you're drafting a guy like this to raise the level. You're a playoff team. Maybe, I don't know, you ended up in the late lottery or teens or 20s, and you see it in Fleming's on the board, and you're like, I'm going to add this guy to support my stars, accentuate their strengths, cover their weaknesses. He's like, he's filling in some of the gaps in your roster is why you grab a guy like Rasheer Fleming. And so that's kind of how I was seeing him. And so with the creation stuff too, once again, and the finishing, it's like, I'm not expecting the world from him. But at the same time, if he could just like something I saw in his stats we talked about before, like 3-point shooting has increased, free throw shooting has kind of stayed stable, but like even his field goal percentage has gone up. Year one, he was at 42%, then 52%, and this year over 55%. And so he's trending in all the right directions. And I think his finishing is a part of it. Something that I did want to say with him is that like I don't think he's the best vertical athlete. But for what he lacks in terms of vertical pop, not to say that he's not vertical athlete, but he's athletic, but he's not like flying through the air, I felt. But I felt like a lot of it was totally fine because of how long his arms are. And so that definitely helps him out. And also the fact that he's really, really strong for the college game. And so I thought the physicality and the length that he has is more than enough for him to be a rock solid finisher on the college level. And I think he'll be fine in the NBA level as well.
Yeah. I mean, he's 67% overall end in the half court. So, obviously when he gets the ball down low, like, he's efficient. And as a play finisher, as a guy who is either cutting or standing in the dunker spot or screening and rolling, like, he's going to be somebody who's finishing efficiently. Is he Amin Thompson, Asar Thompson level of balance? Like, no, probably not, but he is he's probably got a better like frame physically. And those two guys are super strong too, right? And like you said, like, his length is ridiculous. So I think that the length, and even like talking about more of his touch finishing, and again, I don't think he has like super great touch. And when he gets the ball like down low, not to say you're like giving him the ball on the block by any means, but like, obviously he's going to get it there sometimes, on drop offs, whatever. He can't dunk everything, right? Like, he does have that like turnovers, left shoulder, righty, like, hook shot, and he gets like really good elevation. The ball he releases really high. It's really hard to block, and like, the touch is fine. Like, it's good. Obviously, like, 67% in the half court. Like, he's an efficient guy. You're not giving him the ball down low, and part of that is just because like, he's not going to be able to make you pay as a passer. If you were to spam that move, although I do think he's gotten better there. But he's also a really good offensive rebounder. And this year, I think he's like playing even more around the perimeter. So like the rate is down a little bit from his first 2 years. But if you see him like when he is down low and like the ball comes off the glass, like, he gives multiple efforts. He's got that length to kind of tip the ball around back to himself and get his hands on it. He's got a quick first jump off the floor. So yeah, he's a guy who, like, I love his motor in that regard. And yeah, the offense is simplistic, and we'll kind of talk about, we can move into the playmaking now as to why it's a little more simplistic, right? Because as a playmaker, I would categorize him more as a ball mover than like even a connective passer. If you look through like most of his assists, it's like passes that are one pass away. But he definitely has gotten better this year than he has in years past. And like, he has shown like much more intriguing flashes in coming out of the short roll, being able to see the weak side. When he does have the ball in the post, I think sometimes, he can make that skip because he, is tall and long, and now he's growing accustomed to the college game and feeling more comfortable there, and, having a bigger part in the offense responsibility. But I think with him, we always talk about how we want guys to be like 0.5 guys, where it just takes a half a second to be able to make that decision, whether you're going to like dribble, pass, shoot. I feel like he's like a 0.75 processor. Like, it's just like a little slow. I want it to be like just a little quicker for him to like move off the ball, because there are times, like, even like, not even talking about him as a passer, like to create an assist. I think like, I want the ball to like swing his way, and like, if he doesn't have a shot, to like quickly keep the ball moving, like, without having to think, like, understanding that the closeout's going to come. So just like make that next pass and then flow right into like a screen out of that. So like, now he's not only like a stationary spot up guy, but he's using that gravity as a spacer to then get the ball, flow into the next option, roll to the rim, and then, he can either finish or, if he can make that short roll pass consistently off of those actions where the defense is already a little tilted, like, that's where I think he kind of needs to get to really reach like whatever we perceive his ceiling is. Because I don't think he needs to hit his ceiling to be a very good NBA player. But I do think that, the processing has to improve even with that, for him to like be on the trajectory and in the space for him to become the player that I think his ceiling kind of says that he could be, in my mind.
Yeah, Corey, just listening to you talk right now, you kind of sounded like, you are a high school basketball coach, but that I felt like that's
Tough
what I
loss.
was hearing.
Tough loss in the playoffs. I'm not going to lie.
Okay.
Not going to lie. 3-point game, couple of really bad, debatable. We'll say debatable. 3-point fouls back to back in the last minute of the game. So yeah, but That's another story. It's another story.
But I feel like you're kind of still in coaching mode. Like it sounded like you're working with one of your kids and you're like, hey man, like I love what I'm seeing. You got that your head in the right space, but we can fine tune this because Corey, I think everything that you're saying, I really agree with what Mr. Ray is saying in the comments right now. Like, I think the important foundation of this conversation is the fact that he is an unselfish player. Like, he actually is willing to not just play his role, going back to what we were talking about before, but he's also willing to, flow within his role. He moves the ball well. He cares about moving the ball. He's not this black hole that you throw the ball to and you're expecting to never see the ball again. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's an important distinction with him that we need to focus on, where you're right, Corey, maybe he's not at that 0.5 or at the elite 0.25 that we see with some guys, but maybe he is a 0.75 right now, or maybe worse, a 0.8, 0.9. I don't know. But the fact that he's still willing to pass, that he is an unselfish player, that he cares about playing team basketball, I think those are really important things that we need to note with him. And that's why I just wanted to say, like, I love what you're saying, because that is that next step for him. And I think NBA coaches will see that. And the most exciting part, though, is that the foundation is good. And NBA coaches are going to be like, good. Hey, Rasheer, we love that you're unselfish, that you like passing the ball, but we want to speed things up a little bit here. So let's get into the film room. Let's watch film. Let's work on some of these reads that you're making. How can we speed this up? Right? How can we have you anticipate how the defense is going to move and shift, and how you can take advantage of, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm right there with you, Corey. I think it's there in him. He's going to be an unselfish player, but with more reps, with more time, and with NBA level coaching, I can definitely see him eventually getting to that 0.5 area of passing and connectivity.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So all in all, I think there's a lot of interesting tools to work with offensively, and then I think now we can kind of talk about his defense. I think his defense is really fun. 5.2 block percentage, 2.8 steal percentage, 24.9 defensive rebound percentage. He just rebounds the bejesus out of the ball. Like, he finds a body, he boxes, and then he goes after it, which I love. But I think you look at the tools, and you look at the strength, and you look at the way that he's able to move laterally, and you look at a guy and you go, okay, this is really interesting, and kind of like, the perfect, piece to add to a defense that can kind of break the board and move all over the place. So, what are your first impressions, about his defense this season?
I actually think he's going to be like a nightmare defensively in the best way possible. Maybe I should have framed that better. I agree with you, Corey. Like, I think I wasn't trying to argue. No, Corey, I think he's going to be a problem defensively for other teams. That's twice now where I was really ambiguous about what I was saying. I think with the size, the length, the physique, the muscle. If you look, I mean, Corey, you've seen him live. He probably looks like a Greek god.
Yeah, he does.
Just a really powerful human being who, Corey, like you mentioned before too, has good footwork. Maybe not elite footwork, right? But he can move. He can move laterally. He can stay in front of guys. The thing that's been really fun with him is, like, even when he's out on the perimeter, like, do not think that you're gonna just mosey on right by him. It's not a thing with Rasheer. Like, either he's going to be able to keep up with you laterally, or he's so strong and long that even if you do kind of have like a half step on him, like, you should not be comfortable and thinking that you're going to have some easy lane to the rim. Like, that's just not the case with Rasheer Fleming. He is a big dude, a strong dude. He's really, really long. And I like his instincts too, Corey. Like, I feel like, and you mentioned the board stuff too, but even like, if you look at the blocks and steals, I was going to say blocks and stocks. But yeah, like, he's got a lot of good instincts. I think for me, and I do want to note this, I went back and I watched the LaSalle game, right? Because that was a game that he fouled out of. And I watched every foul. And I was like, you know what? I felt like 3 of them were kind of a bit of a coin toss. I think the ref was a little bit harsh on a couple of those calls, and I think it really impacted his game. Obviously, I think he played like 11 minutes the whole game because I think he had 2 fouls within like the first like 3 minutes of the game, maybe even less, and I think that really messed with him the rest of the night. But to be totally fair to the ref as well, as much as I like him defensively and I love the skills and the tools and all that stuff, there is still a bit of a refinement with him that still needs to come. There are moments defensively where I think he puts himself at risk, where maybe he can overcommit a little bit, or maybe he's like a little bit too aggressive or physical defensively. But ultimately for me, Corey, like, that doesn't bother me too much because I'd rather have a defender that's like too aggressive than not aggressive at all. And especially if he's going to be like a 6'9" long freak like Rasheer Fleming, where if I'm looking NBA outlook, like he could potentially be like a backup 5 for me, or maybe he's a starter and he's playing the 4, and he offers, you know, a ton of versatility, being able to, you know, defend in space and also protect the rim and do stuff on the help side. So I'm okay with some of the fouls, and like I really wanted to make sure to watch that game and realize that like I think maybe 3 of the fouls were kind of like toss-ups, and maybe in a different game they don't get called, and he's got like 2 fouls the whole night. So, but still, I think there is a refinement that will come that will make him an even better defender than what he is right now. I think you're muted.
Yeah, and if sorry about that. And if you look at his per 40, 3.5 fouls per 40. So it's not like, you know, he's somebody who is consistently just like hacking away or anything like that. You know, I think he's obviously like he jump to the next level and everything's faster. And even like, you know, he's not playing in the SEC, right? So like he's not necessarily going up against the best athletes every night. So maybe, you know, that changes as he does move up, you know, in levels. You know, he did have 5 fouls against Texas Tech, right? Like one of the better teams that he's played. So, you know, maybe there is something there to kind of like look towards for when he is playing better athletes. But, you know, against Texas, he had 1 foul. That was a game I went to. He had 20 boards. 2 blocks, 3 steals in that one. But I agree with you. I think he's going to be a nightmare defensively for teams. Like once he gets comfortable, I think that like he's got all the tools that you want. I think he's like super scheme versatile. You know, like if you want him to guard out in the perimeter, like he can switch on to guards and he can guard wings, and he's like long enough and like he can move well enough laterally that like if you put him on a quicker guard, he can almost like in like a shorter guard, he can almost like engulf them with his size. And then like he's strong enough to body up and bang with the wings. And then like he can play like as a small ball center. And if you want him to be like your weak side rim protector, like he can do that. Or if you want him to like play in a drop, he can do that too. Like I don't think he's perfect playing the cat and mouse game, like when he is playing more in a drop, where he's got a guard too, like, and kind of decide, you know, how long he's going to stay with the guard before he gets back to the big, like that's again, some of that processing stuff. And, you know, when he has to do that against real NBA defenders, obviously that offensive like stars, which you find every night on the perimeter in the NBA, like there's, you know, that could be a problem, but like, I don't think he's terrible at it either for a guy who's more of like a forward. But he's got great recovery tools. Like I think he's got pretty good start stop. Like he can play at the level and recover. He can hedge hard and get back. Like his length just allows him to do a ton. And then he's got like quick hands too. So, and he plays hard. Like he makes multiple efforts on the board. He makes multiple efforts. So he's, you know, I think he's just a super, super fun, like defensive prospect that I think if, you know, you get him with the right coach and the right system, like I think he's gonna be a defender anywhere, but like, I think you get him with the right ecosystem and it's like, all of a sudden he becomes just like a scary kind of prospect, you know, similar to like, you know, I think people had some questions about Tari Eason coming out and, you know, whether he was gambling too much or this and that. And it's like, he's on that tough Houston Rockets team, and like he's a nightmare, like you said. And like I think Rasheer Fleming in with the right ecosystem around him is just like, I don't know, he's going to be able to allow you to do a bunch of really cool things defensively that I think should excite any team that kind of takes that chance on him.
Yeah, Corey. I mean, for me, selfishly, like as a Knick fan, I'm watching Rasheer Fleming, and I'm like, Tibbs would love this guy. Like, yeah, he's not a 7-footer, but at a guy who's 6'9", with the way that he attacks the boards and with his length and the toughness, I feel like Tibbs would want to bring a guy like this in and just put him in the lab and teach him all the stuff that he teaches to bigs, and he can be everything that could be everything that he wanted Jericho Sims to be, and it just never worked out, right? So
I was even thinking like Precious.
Yeah, even better. Yeah. And Precious is only back on a 1-year deal, I believe. So maybe cheaper replacement. Who knows? But yeah,
like
Corey,
archetypic, like from as far as like archetype goes, right? He has like, and I think he's more forwardy than Precious is, but like, I think he has like that's a kind of like forward center that like you said, like Tibbs, I think would do really well with, and then he also has some of like the OD body type as well, right?
Yeah. No, 100%, Corey. And I mean, man, if he can put some things together, if you were ever to get to OG's level, then yeah, he'd be making a lot of money for himself. But yeah, like maybe some hybrid of the two. I think that's interesting too, like some sort of hybrid of OG and Precious, right? I think that evens out to a pretty good NBA player. So yeah, I'm with you.
All right, so let's talk about our prospect chemistry. If you were buying stock in Rasheer Fleming, who may you have bought stock in?
I honestly, I can't really think of one, Corey. I think you're gonna have to go on this one because I had trouble with this one, and I usually try to find something, but this one was harder for me.
Okay, yeah, no, I have a few. I mean, I mentioned Tari Eason. Like, I think he's got a little bit of that to his game. He's like what I think I want Patrick Williams to be. I think Patrick Williams is a more fluid handle, but like if Patrick Williams had a motor or was maybe a pulse, even I think that like he would look really good in that role. And then I think if you were looking at like tippy top tier outcome potentially, I think maybe ultimate, like he reaches his ceiling. The self-creation comes along, like he was maybe a guy like Pascal Siakam would be like the blueprint if you were a believer in his potential.
Okay. Wow. I don't hate that because if we got, I mean, people might hear that and be like, "Whoa, it's crazy," but
and I don't think I'm just saying like this is his, like he exceeded expectations.
Yeah. No, but also like go back and watch Pascal Siakam in college. Like he was not who he is now. No, I did. Talking to our listeners, but but I hear that, Corey. I think it makes sense.
Pascal was he was much more comfortable off the bounce. But if you look at the way he was getting those shots, they don't look like what they look like today. Yes. Where he's how was he, a 10-year NBA vet or something at this point? He has to be, because some of the footage that I watched of Pascal Siakam looked like it was shot in 1991, like to where I was like, where did these people get this camera? He's not that old. But again, like I think that's like a tippy top tier outcome that I would not bet on. But maybe if you're thinking lottery for somebody like him, and I know that there are people who work with teams that do feel that he is a lottery talent. I think maybe that's the type of outcome that you hope. And obviously you're not looking for a 1-to-1 comparison, but if he has like the kind of floor where he's going to be like an efficient play finisher and kind of defensive switch army knife, then maybe he does all the stuff that allows him to develop his game, and maybe he has like a crazy work ethic, and he just keeps getting better, as he has the last 3 years and improving, and he lands on something like that. Like ultimately he's going to be his own player, but who knows, right? Like that sometimes we see these outlier kind of developments. And again, it's hard. He hasn't shown anything off the bounce this year, so it's hard to imagine those outcomes. Mr. Ray says Rocco, Robert Covington, which could be another fun one. So but either way, I think he says James Johnson too. So like James Johnson's been in the league forever, and I don't think it's because he knows karate. You know what I mean? Like even James Johnson has like a size, physicality, and skill set that has allowed him to hang on forever. So like if that's kind of where you think his floor could be, like this is a guy I think that you do take in lottery.
I agree, Corey. I definitely agree. I think for me, I think the last time I did my board, I don't have it in front of me, but I think he was like just out of the lottery for me. But ultimately, well, why not? Who cares? Like, I think once we get past like the top tier prospects in this draft, I feel like you could definitely take a guy like Rasheer Fleming at 13. Right? Like, let's imagine
Totally.
that pick is like the Philadelphia 76ers. They're like, I want to add a guy like Rasheer Fleming. Why not? Like 100% could see that, especially if you're trying to take this as like, okay, I like the floor right now and his ceiling can be X, Y, and Z. Who knows? Right. So that's the hard part always of, projecting these guys because, we're not always super clear on where their floors and ceilings are. But with a guy like Rasheer, like his floor is extremely high. And you can see how even if he like doesn't develop that much more from what he is right now, it's still a very valuable asset for an NBA team. So we shall see.
Yeah, I do want to make clear that you mentioned the 76ers at the 13th pick, but they're actually at the 6th pick right now. I believe their pick too, if it doesn't land in the top 6, actually goes to OKC. So the Sixers, if we're talking about them right now, they have 6 pick. Just want to make that clear. All right. Sell me this pen, Albert. On one Rasheer Fleming.
Cool. If you're interested in rounding out your roster, let's say you are a fringe playoff team or play-in team, and you've got like a star player, maybe even 2, and you're thinking like, man, I just want to add in a guy who is going to make my roster more complete, my starting lineup potentially more complete, but just I want to put a guy with my stars who's just going to make their lives easier. You should be targeting a guy like Rasheer Fleming. He's 6'9". He's shooting the ball really well this season. The shooting's going in the right direction. A guy who's going to be an absolute terror defensively. He's already good defensively. Can't even imagine what he's going to look like in a couple of years with more reps in NBA coaching. And a guy who offensively is growing, right? He's shown a ton of growth. And I think as of right now, this present moment, he's more of a play finisher, but there's potential for more. And we don't know what that looks like exactly, but I think his floor is that he's a guy that you can bring in that is going to compete every single night, will be a beast on the boards, is going to be an outside shooting threat, and is just going to fit in. He's a guy that knows what his role is, has no problem playing his role, and has no desire to be, to steal the show. So if you're a team that has like a 1A and a 2, and these guys that are leading your team as the stars, bringing in a guy like Rasheer Fleming would be a great choice because he's going to bring a ton of versatility on both ends of the floor. Oh, you're muted again, Corey.
God, amateur hour tonight over here for me. Yeah, I agree with that. I am buying Rasheer Fleming stock for sure. We are going to take a quick break, and then we are going to hit Arizona's Carter Bryant. All right, we are back. Appreciate everybody hanging with us in the chat, on YouTube, on Twitter /X. If you have not done so yet, make sure that you hit that like button, or if you're on X, retweet us. let's get this thing out. All right, Albert, we are now going to talk another really intriguing prospect. We're talking Carter Bryant, freshman from Arizona, who I think on the surface, if you look at what he has offered this year, you don't necessarily get super excited about it. Just looking at his counting stats, he's averaging 6.3 points per game, 3.9 rebounds per game, 1.2 assists per game to 1 turnover per game, 0.9 blocks, 0.9 steals, 48, 36, 63 splits, 59.8 true shooting, 9.6 BPM, really good for freshmen. But there's still a lot to get excited about, because you look at that and you're not seeing a guy who's putting up crazy counting stats, but up until the last 7 games where he's played 22 minutes per game, 22 plus minutes per game in those 7, he's averaging only 18 minutes for the season. But this is a guy who's 6'8", 225 via the Arizona website. He'll be 19 and a half on draft night. And when you look at wings that are athletic and can shoot again, and that are young, he's a freshman, there's a lot to be excited about by Carter Bryant.
Couldn't have said it any better myself, Corey. He is a guy, and I just want to talk about the minutes for a second, because I like that you brought that up. He's really not playing major minutes, but and he's only started 5 games this year, but the minutes are going in the right direction. I think since the Colorado game, he's played at least 22 minutes in every game since. So he's getting more consistent playing time now. And I mean, more minutes, more opportunity, right? Like early on, obviously there were some inconsistencies with his minutes, but I think since then it's been good, and he's been playing more, and he's been able to show a lot more of his overall skill set. So I'm really excited to get into this game, Corey, because the version of Carter Bryant we're seeing now may be the low point by the end of the season. He may get way better by the time the season's over, just by playing more.
Yeah, and we've long been fans of Carter Bryant. We had a chance to see him in 2023 Nike Hoop Summit. He was a member of the Portland General scrimmage team. And I think we all obviously noticed, the physique and, this super young kid playing amongst, at the time, it was mostly college kids on the scrimmage team. And then it was like Carter Bryant, super young, which they tend to do, mix in. And, he hadn't committed to Arizona or anything yet, but we were like, oh, this kid's super interesting. And then, he played pretty well in the scrimmage. He definitely at least like held his own, looked like he belonged on the court with all these older guys. And then also with, that was the Ron Holland and that whole class at the Hoop Summit.
Yeah.
Bronny James, maybe you've heard of him. Yeah, Isaiah Collier, Justin Edwards, the No Ceilings #1 pick coming into the year, who's looked good as a rookie.
He's been good.
But Carter Bryant, we were like, oh, he looks like he belongs on the court. And then what we really loved was when the scrimmage was over, he stayed on the court for an hour.
Yeah.
By himself, or with his trainer or whatever, doing work. And then when he couldn't like be on the court shooting, he was doing like ball handling off to the side. And, call it performative because, you're in a gym full of NBA executives and scouts. Call it smart, because not all the players there were doing that, being in the same situation. There were a lot of guys who were like showing up right before scrimmage time, and as soon as that thing was done, out the door, right? Like, so I like the kid's mindset and the way that he carries himself, and has for a number of years. So we've tracked his process, his progress. So I think coming into the year, we had maybe higher expectations than some people did. Maybe not. Also, I think ESPN was high on him too. But I think there's a lot to like with him. But again, this is a very, very small sample size. So let's get into The offense, let's start where we like to start. His shooting, 35.7% on 2.7 3-point attempts per game, 8.4 threes per 100 possession, 35.4% on catch and shoot threes, 37.5% on guarded, 34.7% on guard catch and shoot threes. So not a ton of variance whether he's got a contest or not. I think the release is like a little slow, but high release, clean, good follow through, looks smooth. In my opinion, like very, very like believable, projectable shot going forward.
Yeah. No, Corey, I agree. I didn't really have any gripes with the shot. It looked very like it looked natural was what I wanted to say. And what I mean by that was like not necessarily like it didn't look like the most conventional looking jump shot, but it felt very natural and comfortable to him. And I'm cool with that. Overall, I think it looks good enough. Right now, obviously, the efficiency numbers aren't maybe where you want them to be, but I think a lot of that has to do with his minutes have been kind of all over the place this season, and recently it's been getting better. So things should be moving in the right direction. And yeah, right now he's at like what 63.2% from the free throw line, but I think that'll be better by the end of the season. I'd almost put money on it that by the end of the season it'll be either closer to 70 or over 70, just with the more consistent minutes and all that. So yeah, I'm with you, man. And right now, like the quality of the shots that he's getting are pretty good too, right? Obviously playing on a team with, the roster that they have and the guards that they have, when he is taking shots, a lot of the times he's, wide open in the corner, taking, getting clean looks. So excited to see more of that and to see him hit more of them. And so, yeah, I have no problem with the shot, Corey.
Yeah, I think I mean, right now we're seeing like his breakdown's not super, like you can't go super deep into his breakdown. Like,
Yes.
we'll go as deep as we can, right? Like when we say that like Fleming has a very like defined role, like Carter Bryant has been playing like in a much more defined role. Like he is pretty much like, it feels like he is stuck in the corner, or like he's hanging out in like the short porch area, the dunker spot, like waiting for like a drop off or like to like cut to the rim or something. But I think that the three looks good. I think it looks good. He's confident taking it. He's had games where he's hit multiple threes. I feel like he's a comfortable mid-range shooter. So like, look, again, he's not doing a ton of self-creation, right? Mm-hmm. But I do think like he's pretty comfortable doing what we kind of what I want to see Fleming be able to do a little bit, which is like he gets ran off the line, he takes 2 to 3 dribbles and he pulls up. Like he likes getting to the elbows and rising up and taking like mid-range shots too. And he's been pretty good at that, even though I think he's only taken like 13, but like he's been pretty effective when he does get to that. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that as he continues to get more responsibility for the rest of this season. Now I think like coming into the year, one of the things I felt like is that like some of it felt forced when I watched like the EYBL stuff, where I was like, it feels like a little bit like forced. Like I don't know how believable it was. And part of that is like I wish he moved like 10% smoother. Sometimes I feel like he kind of has like a golden retriever puppy energy sometimes, where like he means well, but like he's like doesn't realize he's on hardwood floors. So like as he comes running, he doesn't realize he's going to be able to, like he has to stop. Yeah. And so I think that energy's good, but like when he was like creating more shots, I feel like in high school it led to like some bad misses, but now he's kind of like realizing where he is in the pecking order and what his role is, and that he needs to play a little bit more of a defined role if he wants to like keep getting those minutes. So he is kind of playing a safer game, but like that game that he's playing is like allowing him to be really effective as a freshman in a way that I didn't necessarily feel like. But I again, like when we're talking about his creation ability, like I think that when he does get into that little pull up of a couple of dribbles, like it's a pretty mature confident decision to be able to do that and not try to like bulldoze your way all the way to the rim in a straight line. So I kind of enjoyed the fact that he might have a little bit of like a pull-up game, even if he's not like dicing guys up. And part of me almost like is curious that if he doesn't come out this year, right? If he's not like, all right, I'm getting like lottery or top 20 feedback, I'm going to come back to college. Like I almost wonder like if he gets more responsibility as a creator next year, be it, him kind of creating off ball screens or in isolation, what that looks like. Cause I feel like his handle's functional, kind of rudimentary, but like sometimes like when he does get to those mid-range shots, it's not just like clean looks. Like he's got like the little leg flare because he's like shooting in the air, like, and he's got to like contort his body, get off a clean look. It looks kind of natural. And I wonder if he can get his handle to a point where like he's creating a little bit more consistently, whether it's like an efficient step back from three or, some of these mid-range looks. And like, if the volume were to increase, what that would look like for his projection going forward. Cause like, I don't know how much of that kind of stuff you really work on. Cause I feel like you need that like game reps to do it and like meaningful game reps. And maybe he gets that in the G League if he gets sent down there. I kind of think that he might be like this year's Jordan Walsh. Like just stylistically, the way they play. I don't know if he's going to fall to the second round, but I can see that happening. And then you look back and you go, he probably shouldn't have fell that far. Just because he hasn't shown some of this stuff. But I almost wonder like if he returns, like what that ends up looking like and if he can get to that kind of creation.
Sorry, my brain is just processing the Jordan Walsh call out because yeah, Corey, I think where I'm at, I might be at a slightly I'm trying to process what I think about what you just said because I'm also wondering if there's still enough time this season for him to show more. Like I feel like once again, like it's only been in the last like 7 games that he's had like more consistency in terms of minutes. And I feel like I still think there's an opportunity for him this season to show enough to really impress NBA front offices to take him pretty high in this draft. I think what he's shown so far, right, with the outside shooting and the willingness to play a role, right, playing with Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis, what's his name? Who am I
Caleb
missing
Love.
for this? Caleb Love. Playing with those guys, he's done a really good job playing his role. And even in limited minutes and limited opportunities, he's shown a lot of the skill set. I think even last night in that Baylor game, I know he didn't score a ton, but 6 assists is pretty damn nice. And I don't want to, get too far ahead of myself. I know we're going to talk about like passing playmaking stuff later, but I'm just wondering, Corey, off of what you said, if there's still just enough time for him this season to show enough where an NBA front office might really consider him in the lottery is kind of where my brain is at. But also, I don't hate the idea of what you talked about, right? Like coming back another year. Obviously, Caleb Love can't come back for year 46 in college. And, maybe Jaden Bradley will move on. I don't know. But, maybe he will have more of an opportunity if he were to come back to Arizona to show off more with the ball. But so I find myself in two minds, right? Like that opportunity does sound great, but then also he might go on a little bit of a run here with Arizona. Like this is a good team that might make a bit of a run in March. And if he's a big part of that, playing big minutes and he's being really impactful, then I think he's still got enough time to kind of show all that stuff. And then obviously on the next level, Corey, like to your point about Jordan Walsh, maybe it is an opportunity where he shows more in the G League, but also context is important, right? Like if he doesn't end up on the Boston Celtics and he ends up on a lower team than the Celtics, then maybe he will get that opportunity to do more stuff and make more mistakes in the NBA. So yeah, I'm kind of in between in terms of what you said is kind of what I'm feeling
If
right
you
now.
look at like, Jordan Walsh, like And the Celtics valued him. Like they maneuvered all over the board that year to ultimately to get him. But you look at a team like the Celtics, I think they had like the 28th pick in our latest mock. I don't know if they're at the 28 right now. But then you have like Brooklyn and Washington at 26 and 27, where you go, okay, like Carter Bryant, if he goes there, like that's where maybe he does get the opportunity to kind of like explore the studio space a little bit. Because he has shown some really intriguing stuff for sure. Quickly, we'll talk about his finishing so we can get, to some of that playmaking you were mentioning. He's been an awesome finisher this year, like straight up. I think he's got really, I think he's got good bounce, even really good bounce. And he's like a power dunker. Like he's pretty strong. He's pretty fluid with his body control in midair. He had one like poster against one of like the lower non-conference teams where he had like a runway and transition and went off one leg. 75.7% overall, 82.4% in the half court, low volume, right? So take it with a grain of salt. I'm sure, he's not going to be an 80% finisher in the NBA in the half court, but if he is, that would be nice.
Wow.
Take him in the lottery, as you said. Really good. I think he's a good cutter.
Yes.
He's good in transition. So he does all the simplistic things from that aspect. But as you said, expanding on more of his game outside of the finishing and starting to, talk about some of the passing. I'm interested to hear your take on that.
I think he's an intelligent passer. I wouldn't say he's a savant. I wouldn't say that I think he's an incredible passer, but he's had some bright spots. Now, it is a mixed bag, though, Corey. I do feel like some of the passes have been pretty simple. It's just, once again, the role that he's playing, too, is like kind of like Fleming, like that one more pass. Like some of his assists are coming off of that, too. But then also, there are flashes in the pan that I like a lot, where it's like, oh, he's like, manipulating guys with his eyes and then, making a clean pass to the weak side corner, or finding a cutter, or finding a guy at the dunker spot. I don't want to say I think he's an amazing passer, but the flashes have been good. And you know what? Even to that mixed bag thing, like even last night against Baylor, like his 6 assists weren't Luka Doncic, weren't Chris Paul, weren't,
but one of them.
But one of them, yes.
One of them was stick. Like I think he was on the left wing. And now, to be fair, like he had 6 assists, 2 of them were in transition, and 4 of them were against 2-3 zone. But he was able to pick it apart, even if they are, more simple passes. But one of them, he threw an absolute dime. I forgot who he threw it to, but they were on like the right block, and he was on the left wing, and like tight space, like on a rope, sick pass. But I'm with you. It is kind of a mixed bag. He sometimes like the touch is off, like he'll like overthrow a hit ahead, or he won't necessarily like read or see the backside rotation on like skips. So he'll, give a team an opportunity to like, pick six it or whatever, potentially on like a throwaway like that. But he does do some pretty nice stuff. More recently, he's shown some of the more intriguing flashes. I think, and I think when you play more minutes, you get comfortable and you're not thinking about making mistakes, and because if you're just strictly looking at it statistically, he does have a positive assist to turnover ratio, but he's got a 10.6 assist percentage to 15.3 turnover percentage. So this is not somebody we're again talking about, like you said, that's Luka Doncic, who's manipulating guys by taking 4 dribbles to the right off a ball screen, because teams know that he's capable of taking a sidestep 3 and everybody's rotating his direction. And now, he's making a one-handed swing pass to the weak side corner. Like obviously Carter Bryant's not doing that right now. But as far as the simple stuff, yeah, like you could see him even running some, pick and roll and short rolling, and then, making that next pass off a quick 0.5 decision. So there's stuff there, and the fact that he's a freshman is good. So I think these remaining games are really important for him. I do, because he's starting to show more, and Arizona's, it just feels like they're always better when he's on the floor. So I think that he should continue to play more, and he should continue to start basketball games for them. I think he is somebody who, like, just because the minutes are low, he's going to give the teams a lot to think about.
Yeah. Couple of things. Yes, Corey, agree with all that. I think also when he gets into private workouts with teams and stuff, I think teams are going to like him a lot, is what I'm guessing right now. Don't quote me on it, but that's just the feeling that I get. Really liked his game against Iowa State. I thought he was huge in that game. I thought he hit some really big shots, hit a huge 3 in overtime to help them kind of pull away a little bit. They were up 3, hit a 3, they were up 6, but it was a big shot in the game, right? Big momentum shifter, really big for him. Obviously, he did some stuff defensively in that game that I really liked as well. But yeah, I don't want to, we're about to get into defense soon, but with him, just last thing on him offensively
is that the game he hit 4 threes in?
Yes, I believe
State?
so. Yeah. But the one in overtime was huge. The crowd was going crazy. But the last thing, what was I gonna say? Oh, you mentioned this in passing, but I like his cutting, dude. I think he this year has really accepted, like, hey, I'm on a team with a lot of upperclassmen who are going to dominate the ball, and let me cut off the ball and get some open looks. There are a couple of times where I saw him, he'd be like strong side corner, and he would like fake like he was lifting out of the corner, and then make a nice cut to the basket. They'd find him easy dunk, and it's really nice stuff. And he's tall, he's athletic. You showed that two-handed windmill that he hit in the game, which was insane and not a very common dunk that you see all the time.
Yeah.
Very
sick body control.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Sick body control on that.
Yeah. Very Dominique Wilkins-esque with that dunk, with the two-hand windmill. It's just not a very common dunk we see, but it looked insane when he did it as well. So, yeah, just a lot to like. And I really do believe, Corey, and I think this is where we're both coming to this conclusion, obviously, is that, like, I think he's going to just look better with more time, better with more opportunity, better with, better context as well, even where he's not playing off of 3 other guys who like to dominate the ball, right? So I ultimately, my conclusion with him is, I don't know if I see him as like a number 1 option, but
No.
and that's why we did this pod with him and Fleming. I think the juxtaposition of the two is interesting, where they're both kind of team enhancers. And I think Carter Bryant is going to be really popular with NBA teams, because they're going to look at him and be like, oh, he's going to fit with our roster. Whatever team that is, right? Whether it's a lower end, higher end, like, he's a guy we can bring in and we'll feel confident about what he can do playing with our players. So, yeah, I like him a good amount.
We didn't even talk about the defense.
I'm excited for that.
So let's talk about the defense a little. I mean, just going into the stats: 2.9 steal percentage, 5.8 block percentage, which is really nice. 17.5 defensive rebounding percentage. So, good rebounder as well. I think he's very active and engaged always, even if he's not always doing a positive thing. I think it's not out of a lack of trying. I think he's versatile. I think he's switchable. He's got active hands. I think he's really good at using his length. So he's probably not going to measure with the same length as Rasheer Fleming, but every inch that he does, and not to say he has alligator arms. I think he's probably going to have a pretty strong wingspan, but he uses it really well, and you see it in the steal and block percentage, which we'll see how it holds up with more time, and he has to kind of conserve his energy in different ways and not just go balls to the wall on that end. But I really like him defensively, and he's got all of the measurements that you want your swing wing to have. I don't think that he's playing small ball 5, but I like that he's a prototypical wing size, and he doesn't feel like you are lying about his size and his strength and his length. He feels like whatever round he's listed at, and that's going to be legit NBA size on the wing.
I think like an hour before we started recording, I actually put up a little compilation of his defense. I like it a lot. And you know me, Corey, like when I put on, a compilation like that, it's usually because I'm pretty impressed with the guy.
Yeah,
I don't do it too
that's
often,
true.
but when I do, it's because like I really like what he's doing. I think with Carter Bryant, I had to put it out there because I liked how he uses his length. Something I don't know if we talked about this yet, Corey, but from 2 years ago till now, we saw him last year too at the Hoop Summit, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, his physique has gotten a lot better. Like he's put on mass. He's getting stronger. I think from 2 years ago to last year, we saw growth. And then from last year to now, what we're seeing in Arizona, we're seeing more growth. He's getting stronger. And I think he uses it in a really good way where I think he does a pretty good job of getting into a stance. He moves his feet well. He uses his strength and his upper body to keep guys in front, just like kind of chesting them up, and does a good job of using his length to bother guys and make their lives difficult. I put together, like, I think the video is like a minute and a half or something like that, but a lot of, really good clips of him fighting to stay in front of guys, making their lives difficult, some really impressive blocks. Him getting into the passing lane. There are a couple where he's like guarding his man out on the perimeter, and they're getting a pass over to him, and he just kind of reaches over, pokes the ball away, and he's out running right in transition. So, I think, but you know what? Another thing that needs to be said, Corey, I think it goes for both ends of the floor, where I feel like the inconsistency, like with the minutes, I think affected him in both ways, right? There's a thing where, like, if you're not sure about, what your minutes are going to look like on a nightly basis, sometimes you try too hard. Sometimes you make silly mistakes because you're not really in the flow of the game, and you're not really in the flow of yourself even. So I think there have been some moments throughout the season where maybe he wasn't perfect or like really great defensively, but I think part of that can be excused because of kind of where his minutes were. And I think right now where we're watching him, I think we're seeing the best version of him. And I think well, sorry, not the best version of him, but a better version of him. And I think defensively, we're seeing a lot of that, the playmaking ability that he has as a defender, and the ability to just be kind of a pest and make lives difficult for like the people that he's guarding, I think is really, really impressive. And so I think I'm higher on him with his defense than even his offense, which I wasn't really expecting to say after, I did the deep dive with deep dive on him. I think he's going to be a really solid NBA defender. And I think as he gets only stronger, and he becomes more comfortable with his body and all that stuff, I think he's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, he offers a ton of versatility, right? Like he's stronger than I think people think. Like Darian Williams, Texas Tech, who's like he's giving up height to him, but
Yeah.
he's kind of like in the David Roddy mold of just like a big body dude who's like loves to operate in the mid post and back guys down. He, like opening possession, tried doing that, and like
Yeah.
Carter Bryant
Off
just
the
like
tip.
send it
Yeah.
right back to him. He did it a couple of times and like ended up in a really bad spot. I thought that he like really did a good job on him in those minutes, but then like against Baylor, he's like guarding Norchad O'Meara, and then later in the game, he's like switching on to Robert Wright, and even on Edgecombe. So like he's very versatile in like the amount of guys that he can guard, and that Arizona has been willing to allow him to guard. So I think that's really good. I think defensively, like I said, the effort's there all the time. He does make some like young guy mistakes of like
Yes.
he'll help too far, strong corner, and like he'll make like a really good second effort to get back out and contest, but it's like, if you are tagging too deep into the paint, like it's gonna be a three. And like he'll give up shots that way. It's more of that like golden retriever puppy energy sometimes. But like all in all, like he is a young guy. He is learning. I think Arizona's better when he's on the floor. He guards a ton of guys. And, the defense is part of the reason why I think they're better. Like I think he's just a really versatile defender at the college level, and I think he has the athleticism, the strength, and the want to be good at the next level too. Like when he's on the ball, he sits in his stance. Like he'll get up and get in a guy's shirt.
Yep.
So I think he's a like you said, really fun defensive prospect. He's I think more of a mystery bag as an offensive prospect because you're just wondering, like, is there more to his game? Or if you gave him more responsibility, does that mean that it's going to be worse? Like, is he best utilized in the simplistic role? But at the same time, like, if this is what he can offer, maybe that's enough, especially if the processing and the passing continues to kind of trend in the right direction. That, like, maybe if you're just like a guy who can make smart cuts and spot up and hit shots and take 2 dribbles and get to a pull up to when guys run you off the line, so you're not like bulldozing guys at the rim and forcing turnovers with a charge. Like, if you can do all that stuff, maybe that's enough with the defense that he offers, even if nothing else with the offense comes along. So, but all in all, this is a guy who I do, like you said, I think when he gets in interviews and, they start doing workouts, like, he's not a mystery to teams. He's been around them and on their radar for years, obviously. Like, this is a guy who was in all the All-Star tournaments. I saw him at Jordan Brand. I'm pretty sure he was in McDonald's All-American as well. Like, he's obviously like a highly touted recruit, and you see all the reasons why. But a lot of times, like, recruits like that, when they do have to play this role, they're not used to it, and it goes poorly. And he's kind of slid in seamlessly into this role player role. And I think that's, an encouraging sign for him.
No, Corey, I agree. And it's something we talked about before with Rasheer Fleming too. Like, it's a good thing when you see a guy willing to play a role. I think NBA teams and NBA front offices and execs, I think they care about that. Right. And even if he has more in his bag, we don't see him pouting. We don't see him, shrugging his shoulders or dropping his shoulders and dropping his head and, being a negative type of personality on the court. He's willing to play a team game. He's willing to fill in, the holes and the gaps that the team needs from him as a freshman. And so I think all of those things are really, really positive with him. And like you said, Corey, like, the offense is a bit of a mystery bag, and we don't know what exactly it's going to look like, as a finished product. But I think at the very least, like, we have to focus on the fact that, like, tools wise, he's got all the things you're looking for from a modern NBA wing. And defensively, he brings it every single night. And we believe in the shooting. I think we all believe in the shooting. And I think it's going to be a weapon of his. And so if he's going to be a 3-and-D wing, well, those guys are really valuable and sometimes get traded for 5 first-round picks. I don't say that as a slight. I absolutely love that Mikal Bridges is a New York Knick. But that's what I'm trying to say. Like, these guys are valuable. Right.
Okay,
they're very, very valuable.
So if you're buying stock in Carter Bryant, who may you have bought stock in?
So this obviously not a 1-for-1 comp, but I really did think about Mikal. Like, I did think, like, because the thing with Mikal is, even if you go back to college and the way that he played then and the way he's playing right now on the Knicks is a team player. Mikal Bridges for the Knicks is a guy who doesn't ever demand the ball, but and yet he has the ability where on Christmas Day he can give you 40 points against the San Antonio Spurs, right? But what you do expect from him every single night is for him to fight and battle as a defender. He's going to be able to space the floor for you, and give you at the very least that type of 3-and-D ability. And then on sub nights, as you coined, Corey, give you some of that 3-and-D plus ability, right? And that's what I'm hoping for with Carter Bryant. I think for me right now, with where my head is at, Corey, I feel like that might be his floor, is just where I'm at right now. I could be wrong, as I've been wrong many, many times. But, like, what if he's a 3-and-D guy just to start? And then a couple years in, he starts to find the plus. And then who knows, right? Like, if the other aspects of his shooting and scoring and creation ability goes up even more, maybe he becomes like a first or second option on the team. We don't know for sure. And he is so young that all of those possibilities are still on the table. But yeah, Corey, just for me, Mikal Bridges came to mind in terms of, like, role and the type of player he might become.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I went, like, similar direction. Like, I thought, like, DeAndre Hunter. So a guy who, he averaged 19 points per game this year. Like, Cleveland Cavaliers just targeted, went out and got, and I think he's going to provide a really valuable role for them. So we're looking at, like you said, 3-and-D plus guys who are able to do a little bit more than just space and defend, and hopefully he can figure out that little bit more. But if I think the thing is, you look at DeAndre Hunter, you look at Mikal Bridges; these are guys who spent time in college. Yeah, I believe OG even is a guy who spent a couple of years in college as well. Trey Murphy, as Mr. Ray said, obviously Trey Murphy was a sniper at every level that he played at. So. But he's another guy who stayed a couple of years in college, and that's why I wonder, like, does he stay? Does he return to college? Or does he hear really good feedback and, get some kind of promise, and he comes out this year and he says, you know what, I'll try to make the main roster, and if not, I'll develop in the G League, and, down the line, I try to turn myself into one of these guys that we mentioned. Because I don't think he is like Zaire Williams, he's not like raw like that and like too skinny to really like handle the physicality, right? But I think this is a valuable archetype. So like you mentioned it. I don't think it would be crazy if on draft night we see him get drafted in the lottery. Like even with the limited minutes or whatever this year, like I don't think that would be crazy, and I wouldn't be like flipping tables if I was on the draft night stream if that pick was while I was on the stream. Now if I was the fan of another team and I was like, this guy averaged 7 points a game, and I wasn't following the draft, maybe you start doing that a little bit more. But if you actually watch him and you break it down and you found your way to this video or some of the, I'm sure, writing that we're going to have on him, this is a guy who I think any team would, like to have in their development system, whether that's the G League or the main roster. So, I'm a fan. I am a fan. I'm glad that when I asked who you want to cover this week, this was a name that you had mentioned.
I agree with everything that you said, Corey. I think when we saw Zaire Williams go 10th, we freaked out a little bit. We were at that draft.
We
were shocked, to say the least. We did not like that selection.
Shocked? I don't know if I want to say we were shocked that it happened, but we were in a pretty firm disagreement on the decision.
Yes. We were. I still remember the pod we did on him during that cycle. We were not excited about him at all. We had major red flags and major question marks. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think Carter Bryant is that.
No.
At all.
No. All right. Let's, Eric Olson asks, who would you flip tables for in the lottery? Who would make you flip a table if they landed in the lottery, Albert? I know my answer, but I'm interested in yours.
Rocco Zikarsky.
Okay. Some guys are a fan. If you subscribe to No Ceilings Plus, and you watch our mock draft war room videos, you'd see me with my reaction to this guy. There are some fans in lottery range of Alex Caravan at No Ceilings, and if my team took Alex Caravan in the lottery, I would probably protest that franchise. I like if the Bulls had drafted Alex Caravan in the lottery, I would never watch a Chicago Bulls game again, or at least until the regime got replaced.
Yeah.
But other than that, not a ton of guys that I think I would have like an insanely strong reaction to, because Zikarsky would make me go, oh, okay. I guess they went to the good. I guess they went to the U15 Australia tournament. All right. So Albert, before we finish on Carter Bryant, we need you to sell me this pen on Carter Bryant.
Okay, Carter Bryant. If you like guys that play really really hard, that care about the right things, that are willing to play a role, but also potentially may become, I don't want to say stars, but maybe a star, maybe some star potential in him. You should be looking at a guy like Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant is really young, a guy who has NBA physique. He's going to shoot the ball well enough, I think. He might be a really good shooter. Who knows? But the thing with him is he's already a good defender, a guy who really competes, knows how to use his strength and his upper body, can get into a stance, can move his feet, keep his man in front of him while also using his length to make their life difficult. He's a guy offensively right now that has more of a simplistic role, but a lot of that also has to do with the context that he's in. We believe that eventually he will have a more diverse offensive game than what he's shown in his freshman season at Arizona. But yeah, he's kind of the prototypical 3-and-D wing that NBA teams really enjoy and are looking for. And he potentially might be, as Corey likes to say, a 3-and-D plus type of player with his ability to create for himself and maybe go get a bucket. So if you're interested in a guy like that, you should be very, very interested in Carter Bryant.
Really intriguing prospect. Fun juxtaposition, like you said, with Rasheer Fleming and Carter. Rasheer being a little older, maybe having more impressive physical tools. Carter Bryant, maybe having some advantages on age and potentially even like processing stuff. Both guys, I think, have a ton of runway and room to grow, and I think teams would be smart to buy in on them. Because I think these guys are both going to make it for sure. So, Albert, before we get out of here, just want to thank everybody for watching live with us as you do. Always, if you have not yet, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast feed, make sure you rate, review, and leave us a comment. That always helps, especially because, it's almost March Madness and we are gearing up for some really great content going forward. On the site, that's at noceilingsnba.com. Subscribe there. It's free. You can also get our No Ceilings Plus option, which is going to have a ton of, bonus stuff that we've been continuing to churn out. Behind the scenes stuff. Our guys have been traveling and going to watch a ton of games live. So their scouting notes have been going up there. So a lot of good stuff on the site. Albert, tell the people where they can find you.
As always, you can find me at Alberto Gim on Twitter, at GTGNBA. Shout out to A Bit NYC for the sweater that I'm wearing today, as always. But yeah, we're excited, Corey. This is a great time to be alive.
Yeah, and shout out your wife has joined the social team.
Mm-hmm.
So exciting stuff.
I did. Yeah,
it's exciting stuff. Yeah, very exciting. You can follow me at Corey Tullaba on Twitter, NBA Draft Dude elsewhere. And yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight. Appreciate everybody for watching, chopping it up in the chat. As always, we love you all. If you are watching, you're not hopping in the chat, what are you waiting for? Come join us and be interactive. It's a lot more fun that way. So until next time, though, we are out. Peace.